We are back with more NBA coverage, and I'm going to go on from all of the action that took place last Friday and proceed from there, starting out with the Magic Celtics match last Friday. The Magic tried to keep it competitive early on, to be completely honest with you, but they just could not match up with the Celtics. I mean, we figured that anyways. You have Banchero just coming back from injury. You have no Franz Wagner. You have no Moritz Wagner. It was going to be difficult. We understood that coming into it. But still, the fact that they were so close and yet so far away is just wild to me. Like, they had a pretty good start to the game. And then everything else after that just crumbled for them because the same story played out for the Celtics as it has for most of the season. Now, to this point, they had been meddling over their past few games. They were literally at a 500 record over their last 14 or so coming into it. So naturally, things were going to have to try to shape in a different direction for them, or they would continue to go on that slot, which to that point was tied for the worst record in a 14-game span under Joe Mazzulla. So they had to turn the tide quickly. And granted, that happened because in every single game this season, you know that they're going to live and die by the three-pointer. You thought it would have regressed after last season, leading the league in three-point attempts and even efficiency. That has not slowed down. They still just jack them up consistently. And what a defense playing against them has to do is account for them, contest the shot, to at least scare them off of shooting them so willingly, or at least being able to convert on them as many times as they could. Because if you give them the open look just one or two times in a row, they're going to start to get hot and they're going to start to get streaky, and that is when they can be highly efficient and shoot a team out of a ball game and completely distance themselves. That would start to happen in the second quarter. They were down 66-54 to enter the third, where they would chip away at it just a little bit, but ultimately, as the quarter kept going along, as Jayson, Tatum, Derek White, even Kristaps Porzingis, for a while, made all of his shots from the field. And they tried their absolute hardest to try to shoot themselves back into the game, knowing good and well that they were the worst three-point shooting team by efficiency. And it's a recipe for complete and total disaster if you're not going to play the defense that we know the Magic can play to this point. They're still one of the better defenses the league has to offer. But you can't play that against them, and then you can't match their scoring. It got real bad real fast. By the end of the third quarter, Boston would have themselves a 20-point lead that extended a little bit in the fourth quarter. Despite the Magic continuing to chip away, it wasn't enough. They would follow that up with an errant turnover or just a bad shot altogether that led to easy transition offense, allowing the Celtics to get ahead of schedule and continue to create high-efficiency shots. They were shooting very well around the rim in this game. And you combine that with lethal three-point shooting, they were just no match. I mean, literally, they won 121-94. But think about this. The Celtics made 12 more threes. They had 17. The Magic only had 5. And keep in mind that the Celtics only attempted 37 from the field. Orlando made those 5 out of 32 fucking attempts on the night. Just 15.6% shooting from beyond the arc. You're not winning a basketball game in this day and age shooting that horribly from three-point land. It's not plausible. You can't do it. Even with them winning the matchup of points in the paint, Still wasn't enough, and most of it was honestly garbage time. You literally couldn't do much of anything else. The Celtics in this one would have Jayson Tatum go for 36 and 4 on total of 21 shooting. Kristaps Porzingis would have 23 points on 10 shots and would have 3 3-pointers. Jaylen Brown would also have 20 points on the night with 6 assists and 3 steals while shooting 5 of 12 from the 3. And Derek White would also have 12 points on the night. For the Magic, Wendell Carter Jr. would have 15 points and 9 rebounds on 4 of 9 shooting. Paolo Banchero had a tough game. And he was playing erratic as well, honestly, with some of the shots that he was taking. But granted, being the star player out there, he felt like he had to chuck up different shit. And more often than not, it seemed to cost him. He shot 8 of 20 from the field. Cole Anthony had 23 points on 9 of 15 shooting. Probably one of his better performances after nearly being taken out of the rotation earlier in the season. But this one, was to no avail, honestly. You just simply were not competitive for enough time to truly make it a game. Now, a similar thing would take place in this Grizzlies and Spurs game. Now, I did not watch any part of the first half. I was tending to other things at the time. I was tracking it and did note that the Grizzlies had been in a very tight match with the Spurs. Both teams ended up taking leads on numerous occasions. And though the Spurs tried to distance themselves, ultimately, Jalen Wells, who has been a very good rookie for them, even with him being taken late in the first round out of Washington State, he has more than produced for them at this point. They really love his contributions down there in Memphis, and you can already tell. I mean, you're trusting him to take some of these shots already, and he's not even a full 4 months into the league yet. So, hey, that's just insane. We're full 3 months into the league at this point. Nonetheless, another lead change would take place as Charles Bassey would get an alley-oop off of a Harrison Barnes lob to give the Spurs a 2-point lead going into halftime with a score of 64-62. Now, I missed a little bit of the third quarter as well, but the Grizzlies and Spurs would come right back out doing the same thing, going bucket for bucket, as the lead would consistently change for a while. And then, at around the midway mark of the third quarter, I would cut on the game and watch the rest from there. And let's just put it like this. Things got really bad from this point. Now, Devin Vassell would get a bucket and also make some free throws, but after a while, shit got bad. Shit got real fucking bad. Okay. From the time the game was tied up with a score of 86 all after Devin Vassell made a 2-pointer, you would see the Grizzlies, with the help of Santi Aldama, making some much-needed buckets and productive plays overall, with the help of Brandon Clark also stepping in a complimentary role and hitting shots. The whole rest of the team was able to get in a complete and total rhythm, just hitting shot after shot after shot. Luke Kennard hits one. Brandon Clark gets another. Santi Aldama kept it going, and Desmond Bane would ultimately get the final bucket in the third quarter as they ended it off on a 16-0 run. Okay? Keep in mind that it was tied at 86 all. They had a lead of 16 by the end of it. And it just continued to start off the fourth quarter. By the end of it, they had went, the Grizzlies, on a 54-26 tear into the fourth quarter and eventually the end of the game. Would have been even worse, but by that point, the Grizzlies decided to just put in their second unit because they had enough, they felt. They wanted to take a little bit of mercy, or show a little bit of mercy towards them. They still ended up hanging 140 points on their head. And get this, all of this happened without Ja Morant. All of this. He did not play in this game whatsoever. Like, Desmond Bane led the way in quite surprising fashion. Now, he had a game earlier this season with double-digit assists, but I still didn't expect the man to come out there and drop 22 points, dish out 14 dimes, a career high for him, and also 6 assists. Didn't see that coming whatsoever. I didn't know he was able to facilitate like that, but I guess I just have to peep a little more game. He also shot 10 of 17 from the field as well. That helps. Jalen Wells, in a starting role, would also contribute 22 points straight up on 8 of 11 shooting and shooting 6 of 8 from the three-point line. Jaren Jackson Jr. didn't even have to have a strong performance like that. He played only 26 minutes and put up 19 points while shooting just 8 of 20 from the field, but it really didn't matter. Everybody else was activated. I mean, you had Luke Kennard spot them in a starting role with 17 points and 2 threes easily. Brandon Clark had 12 points off the bench as well. Santi Aldama off the bench had 29 points and 8 rebounds in 30 minutes while shooting 10 of 19 from the field and getting 5 threes to go down. Almost every player that stepped on the court for them scored. Only Yuki Kawamura and John Conchar did not, and they played the final 2 minutes of the game while not even attempting a shot from the field. So that should tell you something about just how deep the bench really is for the Grizzlies. There's a reason why they continue to lead the league in bench points, I believe, bench production. It helps that usually they would have Scottie Pippen Jr. leading the charge, and even he did do a decent job of facilitating, but he had just 7 points. Nothing crazy. But everybody knows what the hell they've got to do to get the team or lead the team to victory, and surely enough, they fit very nicely into those roles, leading to a smooth transition. As for the Spurs here, they struggled during that stretch. Everybody went cold, even with it saying that the Spurs had shot 47.6% from the field. During that stretch alone, it seemed like nobody could hit a shot at all. Everything was missing for them. Wembanyama had a rough shooting night, and Harrison Barnes had a rough shooting night, which certainly didn't help their cause. And it was great to see the contributions of Devin Vassell and Stephon Castle, who got 21 points and 20 points respectively in this one. But that was still not enough. He needed way more. And ultimately, this comes down to a defensive issue. I mean, the fact that they were allowed to get so many open looks and get out in transition so easily just made a terrible situation even worse for them. And honestly, for the Spurs, over the course of this stretch of games that I'll be covering, it seemed like these struggles were just persistent. Every other time, it seemed like they would keep a game competitive. And then, think about a coach like Steve Kerr, who excels in the third quarter throughout his career. This is just a couple of games or so, but it seems like the Spurs have an issue with compounding on opportunities down the stretch. They crumble within some time in the third quarter, and then in the fourth quarter, it's just completely lost. So they've got to figure that out. That's what I would say. But moving on to a little bit of the action from the rest of the night, the Nets would manage to keep it competitive somehow, but would ultimately lose by a single point to the Lakers. Now, it's pretty weird. They got damn close from what I'm seeing, but it looks like D'Angelo Russell missed what would have been the game-winning shot, so that's pretty funny. Of course they would try to get him the ball in that situation. They were playing in Los Angeles, second stint with the Nets, ironically enough. You're trying to prove a point, I get it, but no. At the very least, it looked like some of their core players actually wanted to step up just a little bit this time. But it says something when you mean to tell me that D'Angelo Russell, as much money as he has been getting paid as well, has to come off the bench and produce 19 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists on 7 of 15 shooting and 5 threes for another man in Ben Simmons, who has a great number on his contract for his standards of his own and contributes just 6 points, 5 rebounds, and 7 assists while just shooting layups. The Nets are, I don't know, they are just quite the team, man. They are truly a team of capable players, I guess. No, it doesn't always show. I guess they got close, but it really comes down to just getting their players healthy, to be honest. Because people still can't tell me. Hardcore Nets fans still are not able to recognize who the hell some of these people are out there. Of course, you're going to drop ball games. At least you didn't get blown out this time like they normally would have, or like the last stretch of ball games for them that I covered. Meanwhile, in a game where D'Angelo Russell was out to prove a point, it was actually Austin Reeves that had the game of the night and the game of his life, to be honest with you. He was definitely out to prove that they made the right decision in letting him go because, as I stated, it was going to open up more PT and more opportunities for Austin Reeves to be a sort of point guard that they were truly looking for. Surely enough, though the assists weren't there, he would drop a career-high 38 points on 13 of 23 shooting, along with LeBron getting a 29-point near triple-double with 7 rebounds and 8 assists on the night. Nobody else really had to do much of anything, but their players hit timely shots except for Max Christie and Dalton Knecht. They both struggled. Both of them. 2 of 13 shooting for Max Christie, and not a single made attempt from the field for Dalton Knecht either. Definitely rough shit. I can't deny that. But still, though it was close, through and through, they got the victory. The Nuggets and the Heat would face off in Jimmy Butler's return, and he would make a whole spectacle about it, donning Michael Jordan's number 45 jersey as an ode to Michael Jordan's unretirement in the 94 season. I guess it makes sense, but for you to do that and then proceed to put up 18 points in 33 minutes, I guess that's fine. It's something. But you're also playing against the Nuggets team that would eventually beat you by 20 points with a score of 133 to 113 in your return. Now, granted, he did keep the game close while he was in, but it just begs the question of why didn't you remain in? Why did you want to take yourself out of the ball game when it was closer and then allow your team to go out in such a way? It's just the situation is just so crazy right now down there. And the other Heat players are certainly feeling it. Even though, again, players like Tyler Hero are still finding ways to produce in spite of it. Even Nikola Jokic has kind of elevated his game just a little bit. He would contribute 16 points and 4 assists off the bench. Terry Rozier also would have just 13 points in a bench role. Interestingly enough. That is another player which they really have to figure out potential moves that they could make, honestly, because I don't necessarily think that they see or should even see Terry Rozier III as a long-term solution, because they do, to this point, still lack a true point guard. Just keep it a buck. You can have Jimmy Butler try to play that position, but to be honest, you actually need somebody who can truly set up the offense in an optimal way. We just got to be real about that. Because the personnel you currently have right now, it ain't going to work out with those guys. The Raptors would lose pretty handily to the Bucks, as the Bucks would get it with a score of 130 to 112, as Giannis would put up 35 points and 13 boards. Damian Lillard would also have 26 in this game on 6 of 14 shooting, while making 10 free throws. As for the Raptors, Scotty Barnes would have a pretty down game. I mean, just 10 points on 4 of 16 shooting. Even if he did get 10 assists as well, I mean, those shots certainly would have helped. And you just left a lot of empty possessions on the board. Left a lot of points on the table. RJ Barrett would also have 21 points and 10 assists, but again, to no avail. You would shoot 7 of 16 from the field. Bruce Brown, name that has not been heard in a long time due to injury, would, I believe, make one of his first appearances this season with the squad and put up 17 points off the bench on 6 of 11 shooting. Kelly Olynyk also got some burn in this game and just hit 15 points as well. All right. Moving on to the Jazz and the Pelicans. Battle of bad in the Western Conference would see the Pels come out on top with contributions from Zion Williamson this time. He would play 23 minutes in this one and put up 24 points in 14 minutes. Well, 24 points and 14 rebounds in 23 minutes, making 11 shots from the field. CJ McCollum would step up his scoring. He would have 26, 5, and 4 on 8 of 16 shooting. Jose Alvarado would also have a pretty solid game off the bench, leading the second unit with 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists on 6 of 14 shooting, and hitting 6 threes even. Trey Murphy III continues to be solid for them in the absence of Brandon Ingram, I should say. 19 points for him in a starting role. Daniel Tice managed to get 18 somehow. And even Jordan Hawkins got 11, although he shot just 3 of 10 from the field. As for the Jazz, no Lauri Markkanen and no Walker Kessler. Lots of problems. They'd been giving the rookie out of Colorado, Cody Williams, a few reps here in the midst of all these injuries, and even Isaiah Collier from USC has been coming in off the bench at times. Cody Williams especially has definitely struggled to adjust. I mean, in this game, in 18 minutes, he went scoreless. Now, he only attempted 2 shots. But I guess this is a player that's clearly still trying to find his footing, obviously. The Jazz as a whole have to really figure out their next step, or if they even plan on taking one at all. So, that there's a little bit of a pass there. Zvi Mikhailuk would step in the absence of Lauri Markkanen and take up a starting role, getting 16 points. Colin Sexton would have 24, and Keontae George would have 26, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists in a starting role, while shooting 9 of 20 from the field. Isaiah Collier did have 8 points and 11 assists off the bench with 7 boards, but shot just 3 of 10 from the field. So I don't know. The whole team just has to regroup and potentially refocus some of their desired plans, because I don't know. They have to figure a ton of shit out. The Timberwolves would face off against the Knicks, with the Timberwolves getting the better of them this time, winning 116-99, with Anthony Edwards putting up 36 points, 13 boards, and 7 assists in this one, on 12 of 21 shooting with 8 threes. Naz Reid would have 23 points and 8 rebounds off of the bench with 8 of 11 shooting, and also 6 of 6 from the three-point line. 3 other players scored in double digits, and even Robert Dillingham managed to get 9 points on the board. Robert Dillingham would become important just a little later on. As for the Knicks, down game for them. You would have Jalen Brunson shoot just 9 of 23 from the field while scoring 26 points. OG Anunoby and Cameron Payne both contributed 18 points. Mikal Bridges also had a very off shooting night with 15 points on 6 of 17 shooting. Josh Hart was ineffective. 12 points on literally 12 shots and also accounting for 5 free throws. Precious Achiuwa would even be shooting 3 of 10 from the field. Keep in mind, too, he didn't attempt a single three-pointer. So these were likely mid-range shots, floaters, attempted layups, and he missed 7 different shots in the paint to score just 6 points and have just 30% efficiency inside the lane. That was the thing for the team as a whole, though. I mean, just 38.9% from the field compared to Minnesota shooting very well with splits of 53, 55, and 71. Like, that is certainly going to keep a team out of any game. Minnesota was a little more dominant on the boards, and they also were able to get a few more points in the paint. The Hornets would beat the Bulls with a score of 125-123. Bulls did make it interesting at the tail end, but the fact that they still managed to lose a game like this is just beyond me. I mean, you would have Mark Williams, who clearly just decided to keep things going, getting 19 points and 19 boards on the night on 9 of 17 shooting. LaMelo Ball would have 26 points and 9 assists on 7 of 19 shooting, with just 1 of 9 shooting from the three-point line. Actually insane. But I guess we can't necessarily bash it. It did help them win the game. The shots that he did hit, at least, and the passes he did make over the course of it all. You'd have Miles Bridges even at 21 points on 8 of 15 shooting, and Nick Smith Jr. at 15 points and 5 rebounds in one of his Spurs starts as a Charlotte Hornet on 6 of 12 shooting. Even Seth Curry would come off the bench and contribute 15 points on 7 of 10 shooting from the field. As for the Bulls, the leader of the game somehow happened to be Nikola fucking Vucevic, putting up 40 points and 13 rebounds with 3 assists on the night, along with a steal in 34 minutes of play on 17 of 25 shooting. Vucevic has not had a game like that in quite a long fucking time. So to see that happen is crazy, and honestly, it is something that the Bulls fans have been waiting for all this time. To see that man produce like that in a game as competitive as this happened to be. It still didn't end up mattering because they still lost the game. That should tell you something. The Thunder would face off against the Mavericks as well. And the Mavericks managed to get the victory here. Credit to them. Though the Thunder are formidable, ultimately, with the help of Kyrie Irving and also Najee Marshall putting up a 14-point and 10-rebound double-double off the bench, the Thunder would succumb to defeat. Like most of the players that stepped on the court for the Mavericks ended up scoring on the night, except for Jaden Hardy, playing just a single minute and not making a shot. As for the Thunder, quite the rough drop for them, but again, in yet another case, they would bounce back. This is a fluky loss. They had no SGA, so in came the likes of Jalen Williams from Arkansas, for example, and some of the random players from last game. The Carlson guy, even Ujman Jang stepped in for a little bit, but ultimately, again, SGA is that great of a player that you're not going to find any replacement for him if you lose him. Like, even though the team is ascending, he is still that important to their overall success. That's what a win for the Mavericks like this shows me about the Thunder. Like, he's just in rare air as a top dog, not just on the team, but also potentially in the league, depending on who you ask. And it's very weird when you look at it, too. I mean, it looks as though the Thunder had extra possessions galore on the night, and they were also able to hit more three-point shots. But at the end of the day, the Thunder got sloppy in transition. Truly sloppy. And ultimately, when you look at the fact that they had as many turnovers as they did while losing the turnover margin, they also allowed the Mavericks to capitalize on most of these possessions, getting 29 points off of it, while the Thunder were able to force more turnovers and had just 17 points off of them in comparison. That is what made the overall difference here, along with, again, lack of translation from offense to defense, and points in the paint. They got dominated down there. I would expect that. Without the likes of Holmgren or Hartenstein in the lineup, even with a frame like Lu Dort's, ultimately you're going to run into a problem because not every person on that court has that build. Even SGA would make it difficult. But you don't have those resources at your disposal, so you had to settle for that and that alone. Moving on to the action from Saturday. Now, there were no nationally televised games, but I did do my best to try and track some of these, especially the game between the Wizards and Warriors. Yes, to track that is wild. And as I was, it was way closer than it was supposed to be completely honest with you. The Warriors would get the victory and secure the season sweep against this team. Andrew Wiggins would have 31 points and 11 rebounds in this one on 12 of 22 shooting from the field. One of the better games he's had all season. Stephen Curry would have 26 points, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds on 10 of 22 shooting with 4 made threes, though he did exit at the very last minute of the game due to injury. Dennis Schroeder would have one of his finest games as a Warrior with 20 points on 7 of 14 shooting and 2 threes. Draymond Green would also find himself in a spot where he had to come out early as well due to injury. Trayce Jackson-Davis, though, would have 6 points and 15 boards on the night. Moses Moody also contributed 13 points off the bench, and Kevon Looney had 10 points and 13 rebounds off the bench on 4 of 8 shooting. As for the Wizards, Jordan Poole had 38 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists on 12 of 25 shooting with 8 threes. As Kyle Kuzma would also have 22 points and 6 rebounds on 7 of 12 shooting. Bub Carrington had 17 points in a starting role on 5 of 8 shooting. Alex Saul has been quite interesting as well. Everybody understood that he was going to be a project player to start out his career. And it seems like there are things that still need to be figured out. That still need to be figured out, rather. I mean, he'll have a few good games every now and then, but then you'll have a game like this where he has a near double-double, but is shooting just 4 of 10 from the field. Feels like with a good portion of these shots, especially inside the paint, inside the restricted area, you probably should be shooting way better than just 33% around the rim, but that's neither here nor there. All right, on to the Rockets and the Trailblazers, who just continue to tumble completely. Even without DeAndre Ayton being here, they still are just a team constructed of just very inconsistent players all around. Let's just be completely honest. I mean, you had Scoot Henderson put up 21 points and 11 assists with 5 rebounds as a 6-man off the bench on 6 of 11 shooting. But outside of that, and Tamani Kamara even managing to put up 17 points as a starter on 7 of 12 shooting, ultimately, the struggle was still there. Shaedon Sharpe and Anthony Simons were completely off, with them also making just 33% of their threes. You compare that to the likes of the Rockets getting 45% to go. And also, they didn't really shoot better than the Blazers at all. They were just a little worse in terms of overall efficiency, but they managed to hit 9 more shots on 22 more attempts from the field because they had a 21 rebound advantage and 15 more offensive rebounds than the Blazers to extend possession after possession. They also managed to get 13 more points off of turnovers, won the fast break battle, and won in the paint, going man-on-man on multiple occasions and just overpowering the defense completely. Everyone seemed to have done well enough in their game, though you can look at the performances of Cam Whitmore and Fred VanVleet and cringe a little bit. They shot 4 of 14 and 3 of 10 from the field, respectively, for a combined 21 points. Though Cameron Whitmore did have a double-double, and, Fred VanVleet was at the very least getting other people involved. I mean, you had Alperen Sengun get 23 points and 15 rebounds with 6 assists on the night on 10 of 19 shooting. Jalen Green also added 26 points on 10 of 17 shooting. Dylan Brooks had a fluky game with 22 points scored on 50% shooting from the field. Don't think that's ever going to be seen like that consistently. Jayson Tate also had an interesting game. He went scoreless inside the paint. He did end up being a solid presence on the defensive end, but that was really about it. Moving on to the Suns and the Pistons. I don't know how this one even got remotely close, but the Suns did win this match 125 to 121. Somehow. I really don't know ball, because the fact that the Pistons can even compete in a game like this against a team like this compared to where they were just last year at this very time, still seeking out a chance to get double-digit wins. It's crazy how they've become this competitive. Again, it mostly stems from the production of Cade Cunningham, though you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell it on this night. I mean, it was poor for him. He had 20 points on 7 of 26 shooting and made just 1 of 7 of his 3-point attempts. He did add 11 assists, though, so other people were certainly getting involved, and it helped the likes of Tobias Harris and Jalen Duren especially. Other players managed to hit their shots at the right times to keep it competitive, but ultimately they fell just short because Devin Booker and Kevin Durant would combine for 71 points, 12 rebounds, and 8 assists. Just as simple as that. That's what the duo is certainly capable of. And they managed to shoot a combined 24 of 49 from the field. It also helped that, hey, look who comes right in, off the bench for some reason. and does something that Nurkic had only dreamed of doing for this squad. In his very first game, none other than Nick Richards steps in and plays 29 minutes off the bench. In that time, he puts up 21 points and 11 rebounds on 7 of 8 shooting from the field and hits 7 free throws at the line. Nurkic had yet to do anything that productive this season. Already seems to be getting off to a good start. Now we need to see more, obviously. But for a first game, for a debut, that is not terrible at all. You will certainly take that. Moving on to the Hawks and Celtics. The Hawks in this one, and it seems like over the course of the season, they just happen to have the Celtics number for some reason. Because you have yet another situation where the Hawks managed to take down the Celtics in overtime with a score of 119 to 115. It wouldn't have even gotten to overtime if not for Trae Young clutching up and hitting 4 straight free throws at the line to put them in position, and ultimately they would win it by 4. Now, in this one, this story came down to the Hawks ultimately being more efficient overall. They still struggle from 3 as a squad. They hit just 24.3% of their three-pointers. Only a little worse than the Celtics, ironically enough, hitting just 28.8% of theirs. I mean, you look at it, the Celtics have more possessions to work with. But the fact of the matter is that they just simply could not contain the Hawks from getting good looks inside. And also, the sheer ability from Trae Young to pass and create these different lanes and different spots for players to get high percentage looks will continue to benefit them, especially in cases where it's working to a high rate. I mean, he had 28 points and 11 assists in this one. Easily. 10 of 23 shooting isn't the best, and 3 of 10 from the field isn't the best. But again, that's fine when other people are taking a little bit of that burden off and hitting some of these shots in these moments for you. It always helps. Because that was the theme for Trae Young out of the early portion of his career. He needed to be the guy to hit some of these shots or they weren't going to have a chance. Now it seems like those other guys have started to elevate their games to where they can be entrusted to hit different shots in clutch moments and alleviate some of that burden that Trae Young likely possesses as the star player. Jayson Daniels had 23 points and 4 assists in this one on 11-14 shooting. Onyeka Okongwu continues to be productive. More productive than Clint Capella, but they still elect to not give him the starting role. 19 points and 13 boards for him off the bench on 6 of 10 shooting, also hitting 2 of his 3 three-pointers. But again, 32 minutes, all off the bench. Wild to me. Absolutely asinine, bro. It is crazy. But again, Hawks get this one, and the Celtics, after winning their game against the Magic, happened to just drop this one against the Hawks team that's fairly easy to beat, if I do say so myself. Rosters don't even remotely match. And yet, they managed to get the better of them here for yet another time this season. The Pacers would take down the 76ers with a score of 115 to 102. 76ers are still unhealthy at this point. You didn't have Paul George in this one, and you didn't have Joel Embiid in this one. So naturally, you were going to suffer. And I'm sure that the 76ers certainly tried in different parts of this ball game, but it ultimately was not enough. And I mean, my goodness, dude. Like, ultimately, and we'll get to more about these players in a bit, but man, the 76ers know that they fucked up. That's all I'm going to say about that. I'll get into that a little deeper later on. As for the Pacers, though, again, Halliburton played in this game. He didn't need to do much. going back to some of those passive elements of his past. But again, 9 points, 9 rebounds. When other players are managing to put up 21, 18, 6 different players got in double figures for them. And none of them were Halliburton. It was just that kind of game for the Pacers overall, where you didn't necessarily need him to go ballistic in the scoring aspect. You just needed him to be the court general, the floor general in this one. Surely enough, he did just that, and they got the victory by 13. Moving on to the Cavs and Timberwolves game from this night. The Cavs would win 124 to 117, with Donovan Mitchell bouncing back a little bit and having one of his better games of the season. Despite shooting just 4 of 15 from the three-point line, he would have 36 points on total 22 shooting, along with 8 rebounds and 7 assists, also a steal. George Niang had a 15-point double-double off the bench, while Ty Jerome also had 15 points straight up. Both of them shot 5 of 7 from the field. Darius Garland continues to be on an ascent. I don't know if he'd get an all-star or not, but it's just great to see that he's become more efficient in his duty as the point guard on the squad. 6 assists and just a single turnover in this one as well, on 8 of 19 shooting. No Evan Mobley for them in this one, but absolutely no problem. Though it does bring cause for concern that Karis LeVert can get elevated in this position. And usually he can be a streaky shooter, but to contribute just 2 points in this ball game in an elevated role is a little wild to me. But I guess I can't question it. Overall, they won the game. As for the Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards had 20 points and 5 assists on 9 of 22 shooting, while Julius Randle had 20 points, 14 rebounds, and 9 assists in this one. I mean, even Naz Reid had 16 points off the bench, and Robert Dillingham had another 12 bomb off the bench. Ultimately, I think the reasons that they lost, ultimately come down to the fact of just, once more, you're leaving too many shots, leaving too many points on the table at multiple points of time. I mean, they let the transition game get away from them completely, and they weren't able to really extend possessions like that. But you mean to tell me that you have Anthony Edwards missing 13 shots, and then you also have the likes of Nickeil Alexander-Walker getting just 2 points while missing 9 shots on the night and hitting just a single one in a 7-point ball game. Some of these certainly could have been useful down the stretch, and they ultimately did not get them, falling to Cleveland, who would become 35-6 after this game. Now moving into the action on Sunday, the Clippers would manage to get the better of the Lakers in this one, 116 to 102, as they played in Intuit Dome this time, not bitchasscrypto.com. The player of this game, honestly, was Ivica Zubac, having a 21 and 19 rebound double-double on the night on 9 of 16 shooting. James Harden also had a 21 point, 12 assist double-double to lead the charge on the offensive side. Kawhi Leonard also contributed 19 points, quiet 19 points, smooth 19 points, just 4 assists, but he didn't have to do much. Again, Norman Powell continues to be productive for them. He is on all-star trajectory. Seriously. I think he is deserving of it. Even with Kawhi Leonard coming back and being a solid player he has continuously been throughout the course of his career, they still gave him the reins, and he still put up 22 points on the night on 9 of 17 shooting. As for the Lakers, Braun would have 25 points, 11 assists, and 5 boards on 9 of 20 shooting. Hachimura had 19, 80 did not have the best of nights either, which is what probably cost them. You would expect him to shoot way better than 5 of 14, and ultimately, that ended up being the key here. They were able to contain Anthony Davis down low and ultimately force the Lakers to continue to chuck up three-pointer after three-pointer after three-pointer as they remain one of the worst teams in shooting the three ball from an efficiency standpoint. They were left with no choice but to conform to the Clippers' brand of defense. Try to take what they are giving you rather than being in your own control and setting up the plays that you want. That cost them heavily. I mean, Lakers lost most metrics, all aside from transition offense. Moving on to the Nuggets and Magic. In yet another dropped match for the Magic, they would allow Jamal Murray to get 19 points on the night on 8 of 16 shooting, and also allow Jokic on just 9 shots to get 20 points and yet another triple-double with 14 rebounds and 10 assists on just 7 of 9 shooting. Like, the fact that this is going on is very revealing. You know, you can have Nikola Jokic continue to take up shot after shot after shot and try to score. But now, as other players are continuing to heat up over the course of some of these games, you are ultimately in a spot where you can give the reins to another player and let them go to work, get some points of their own. And he's still finding a way to get a triple-double out of this, while being as selfless of a teammate as he possibly can be. It's wild stuff when you think about it. Moving on to the Magic. The Magic would have Kentavious Caldwell-Pope get 12 points on just 4-14 shooting on the night. Tristan Da Silva would also have 12. Banchero struggled again from the field with a measly 4 of 16 shooting from the field. Cole Anthony also shot 4 of 13, and Trevelyan Queen even shot 4 of 11. Nobody else could do anything. It's just fucking crazy, man. There is no way. It's wild shit when you think about it. Moving on to the 76ers and the Bucks. Yet another match without Embiid. We know how this goes. Literally. They would lose by 14 with a score of 123 to 109, despite having Tyrese Maxey go off for 37 points, 7 assists, and 6 boards on 14 of 28 shooting. People were trying to contribute, in progress would be made in some regards, but it still wasn't enough to last with just a superior Bucks team in many facets of the game. I mean, Damian Lillard would have another 25.5 rebound and 4 assist performance on the night with 7 of 17 shooting from the field. Giannis would also have a 34-point, 15 rebound and 6 assist game on national television. Even with Bobby Portis trying to stink up the joint, shooting just 2 of 10 from the field for 6 points, it didn't end up mattering. The Bucks have most of their core guys intact. You even have Chris Middleton coming off of the bench and getting up to accept the role of being a sort of 6-man off the bench at this point, as they continue to try to assert him in the lineup, or at least try to make it work with Taurean Prince being in there. Moving on to the Spurs and the Heat. Now this one here was more of the same shit. I mean, you get into this third quarter to start out, and it's a 41-46 ball game at the half, I believe. You're not really thinking that it could get much worse from there. you're thinking this is going to be a very ground out, very defensive style game. All of a sudden, over the course of the quarter, they would allow Miami to spot 46 points on the board while going cold and losing the quarter by an overall margin of 19 points. By the end of the third quarter, they were down 92-68. You tell me how that makes any sense from that kind of standpoint. There's no way that should be happening. You should want to keep it competitive throughout and not allow them to take charge like that. But yet again, in yet another Spurs loss, in this one they lost by 21, that's exactly how it goes. Every time. And I really cannot seem to figure that out. Yet another match where you get solid contributions from Devin Vassell, though when you look at the overall shooting, a combined 16 of 38 between Vassell and Wembanyama don't necessarily help matters. And you're also not getting supplementary help from role players on either side of the ball because nobody could guard a lick on that end. So they ended up dropping another one. As for the Heat, they didn't even need to do all that much after a while. I mean, Tyler Hero had just 18 points while shooting 7 of 12 from the field. Terry Rozier had 20, getting 7 of 14 shots to go in. Nikola Jokic shot 5 of 8 from the field for 14 points. And even Jaime Jaquez Jr. off the bench contributed 12 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 steals in just 22 minutes of play on 5 of 7 shooting. The real stars of the night come from the likes of Duncan Robinson and also rookie Kel'el Ware out of Indiana, as Robinson would get the start here and would put up 21 points, just straight up getting everything to going. He could rarely miss, I would say. 5 threes on 7 attempts, also getting 8 of 12 shots to go from the field. But it was Kel'el Ware with his 25 points and 8 rebounds, along with 2 assists and 2 blocks in 34 minutes of play on 10 of 19 shooting, leading the charge for this team. You gotta love that. The Nets would face off against the Thunder and succumb to their older ways. Because the same shit is happening every fucking time. They got beaten in pretty much any way you can think of, outside of securing extra possessions, though they had the same amount, and that's the only reason why. They were more efficient from three-point land, despite having the same amount of attempts as the Nets, and that could be one way to look at this. But you also see that they allow more points in the paint, could not stop them in transition defense, and could not protect the damn basketball at the right times. But again, you can't necessarily say you don't expect that from a roster that's mostly consistent of just players that are not commonly recognized around the NBA, around the landscape of the NBA, I should say, around the general audience. General casual fans are not going to recognize these people. And most of these people, for a reason, were either out of basketball or out of rotations on prior teams for a good reason. And now we're expecting them to go and play for a Nets franchise and finally start succeeding and being way better players than they ever were before, knowing that they're in the process of trying to rebuild. You can't really expect too much quality basketball outside of Cameron Johnson. And I mean, even with him in the starting lineup, as I would be shown yesterday on a broadcast of a game that will follow, they have been subpar, below average record with him on the court and are winless with him not playing. It's like, I don't know. Even then, he's had 15 points in this one. you got other players in here stepping up and just not being effective. I mean, anytime you have a player like Jalen Wilson taking 13 shots and making just 3, you know that anything you're trying to do in this particular game is not going to work out. I'm not going to lie. The Thunder recognized that they could get pretty much anything they wanted, even with the likes of Adam Flagler and Lou Dort in 21 minutes of play going scoreless while attempting a fair amount of shots. Didn't matter. You had Dylan Jones even stepping in and getting 6 points on the board. You had Carlson getting 8 more. You had Aaron Wiggins getting 12 points off the bench. You had a player in Dukas. I'm not even sure who Dukas is. Alex Dukas. Yeah, okay. Random player like that just can jump in the game and get 9 points making all 3 of his shots. Jalen Williams from Arkansas had 14 points in a starting role and had 8 rebounds and 5 assists as well. It was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and also Isaiah Joe leading the way, as Gilgeous-Alexander would have 27 points on 8 of 14 shooting, along with 10 assists and 4 rebounds, while Isaiah Joe would shoot 8 of 10 from the three-point line and would have just a single assist and a single rebound. But that's his role. He is literally made to just shoot the 3-ball. It doesn't get any simpler in terms of a job for a player. It doesn't. The Bulls would lose to the Trailblazers. Zach LaVine would have 27 points to lead the way this time on 10 of 21 shooting, while Nikola Vucevic would have 17 points and 11 rebounds along with 7 assists on 6 of 14 shooting. The one thing that truly hurt them was an inability to truly produce high efficiency shots. I mean, you had Vucevic getting in the playmaking bag and facilitating aspect for sure, but you want a little more of that from Josh Giddey and Cody White in terms of both facilitating and playmaking. Meanwhile, you mean to tell me that Josh Giddey didn't make a single shot from the field in 29 minutes of play and had just 4 dimes? Meanwhile, Kobe White didn't even care to really assist on any attempts for any one of his guys and contributed just 9 points on the night with virtually nothing else outside of 3 measly rebounds. For an offense that needs that kind of desperately needs that kind of cohesion, then I'm not sure what they expected with this. Neither team is necessarily good at shooting the 3-ball, so that wasn't necessarily the issue here. But they did, the Bulls, allow them to beat them on the glass. Blazers were just crashing in completely and ended up with 50 overall on the night, including 6 more on the offensive side. And that had also an effect on getting to the paint pretty easily, scoring 10 more points in that aspect. Also, in transition, they were just sloppy overall, allowing 11 more points on that end, while they only had just 6 in transition. Now, as far as the Trailblazers go, this was a better game overall. I mean, I guess DeAndre Ayton had a fine one, but 15 points on 15 shots isn't necessarily the greatest, especially when we're talking about centers. That's just the way I see it. Denny Avdia would have a solid performance, though. 20 points for him and 12 rebounds in a starting role. Interesting. You would think that they would have Shaedon Sharpe starting at the small forward position. But it seems like Avdia is more fit for that role, to be completely honest. I mean, the frame, Avdia is a little bigger in height and definitely much stronger than Sharpe has been from what we've seen from him over the course of his entire career. Like, Shaedon Sharpe can get a little physical, but he's pretty easy to push around. So to have that kind of presence on the defensive end especially, I do get the move. And it seems like in this one, granted, Bulls are a crumbling franchise, but it seemed to fare well against them. Wonder if they continue to stick with that. Scoot Henderson will also have 25 points, 8 assists, and 7 rebounds. This time as a starter on 8 of 15 shooting, also hitting 3 of his three-pointers. The Wizards would go out badly to the Kings, as Domantas Sabonis would have yet another double-double on the season, getting 29 points and 18 rebounds, along with 4 assists on 12 of 16 shooting, and also hit 2 threes on the night. DeMar DeRozan didn't necessarily shoot the best, 24 points on 21 shots and not a single three-pointer. In any other case, that probably could hurt, but you can really get away with anything against the Wizards. That's how bad they are. I mean, they only shot 30.8% from the three-point line as a whole as a team, and yet they still ended up being just fucking fine. Even De'Aaron Fox had a very bad game for his standards. 12 points on 12 shots, not hitting a single three-pointer in 35 minutes of play. To his credit, he did get the ball moving around pretty nicely. He added 13 assists on the night, and that certainly opened up the floor for some other guys, like his fellow running mate at Kentucky in Malik Monk, getting 23 points on the night on 8 of 15 shooting and hitting 3 three-pointers as well. Also, Keon Ellis continues to be revelation for them, not on just the defensive side, as it has been well documented, but he also seems to be able to space the floor pretty well. I mean, he had 6 three-pointers in this one on 8 shots for a smooth 18 points. Easy 18 points. As for the Wizards, not a lot of production here. I mean, Jonas Valanciunas had 23 points, 12 rebounds, and 3 assists off the bench on 9 of 11 shooting from the field, sure. But nobody else really got it going. Like, for example, take Corey Kispert, usually a pretty good shooter for them, shooting just 5 of 13 from the field for 14 points. Or take Kyle Kuzma, who continues to eat away at their salary cap, contributing just 13 points on 3 of 15 shooting, while also needing 6 free throws to reach that threshold in 33 minutes of play. Or Jordan Poole, with the contract that he's getting paid as well to try to lead this squad, putting up just 11 points on 4 of 11 shooting, while hitting just 3 three-pointers off 9 attempts. They're just so sad. Literally, nobody could make anything on this end. Just 23.8% shooting from beyond the arc, and also 36% shooting from the field overall. You're not going to win basketball games like that. You just won't. You won't. And especially if you're going to do that and then allow the Kings to get possession after possession on you. Like, it's wild to me. Now, moving on to the action on MLK Day, and I'll go over the games that I watched here first before moving on into the rest of the action. But I guess, well, first game was good, so we'll get into it. The Grizzlies and the Wolves would be on first. And no, I missed a little bit of the early portion. The hype for this one was well warranted. The likes of Anthony Edwards, Ja Morant, and even Desmond Bane continue to keep this game competitive throughout. Even when it looked like the Grizzlies were going to pull away with it after a while. After clawing their way back from an early run that the Timberwolves had to end off the first half, this third quarter would see them, after being down at the very end with a score of 73 or 75 to 67, they would go on a very short 4-1 run to open up the fourth quarter after ending off the third. You then had them continue this stretch throughout, keeping the game within 2 and even 1 on multiple occasions. And then in comes for the Timberwolves, the likes of Robert Dillingham making some pretty good shots in some pretty big moments. And we've seen this ascent over the other games for the Timberwolves that I've covered over this specific stretch of time. Because it would usually be a situation where Dillingham wasn't necessarily called upon a lot over the course of this season. He'd only gotten a few reps in just a few games this season. But he's played in every single game that I've covered. Maybe they are finally starting to realize what he could be capable of, and also understand that Michael Conley Jr. at some point may have no other choice but to pass the torch. So they may be really wanting to see what they have in Robert Dillingham now, rather than waiting the process out. Even though Conley Jr. is probably doing his best to mentor him at this point. We'd have Jaren Jackson Jr. then get close to tying up the ball game, but in comes Naz Reid as clutch time was about to begin, hitting a very timely three-point shot. John Moran and Anthony Edwards would then go back and forth before the Grizzlies would call a timeout, and then you would have Jay Wells get free throws along with Desmond Bane hitting a couple. And just like that, after a shot in which he just completely cashed it, he would give them the first lead they would possess since the very first quarter of the game. Jaren Jackson Jr. would continue it, and then John Morant would continue to pour it on just a little bit. Naz Reid would hit another one to get the game within 3 before Jaren Jackson Jr. would hit what would be the final bucket for the Grizzlies in this game. Now, it was Naz Reid's time to clutch up again, but ultimately we figured that this game would come down to Anthony Edwards. Even in a game where his other mates managed to make history of their own, with Michael Conley Jr. being the 4th player to lead a franchise in points, assists, and three-pointers during his time with the Jazz, along with LeBron James, Reggie Miller, and Stephen Curry. Even in a game where Rudy Gobert became one of 7 to reach 9,000 rebounds and 1,600 blocks in around 800 or so games during his career, it was time for Anthony Edwards to step it up. I mean, his defense played a part in forcing the Grizzlies to score the least amount of points they had scored in the first half this season, with just 43 while shooting 4 of 22 from the three-point line in this ball game. But ultimately, it was going to come down to the man who had just become the 3rd youngest to reach 8,000 points scored in an NBA career earlier in the game. Was he going to rise to the occasion? Well, it'll take a little second. He would miss the very first free throw that he got. He would hit the second, though, and they would get the game within 2. With 32 seconds left, you recognize that you likely had to prevent fouling. You did not need to foul. There was enough time to work with. Grizzlies and Timberwolves still had timeouts to this point. You just had to get a stop, a clean stop, with a Jaren Jackson miss and also a block from Anthony Edwards to secure another possession for the Timberwolves. He would step up in that regard defensively to at least give themselves a chance on the offensive side of the ball. They would call a timeout and try to draw up a play to get you-know-who the ball, and ultimately he would get it. It was quite the miss. It was very, very close, but it was quite contested, and he took it with a fair amount of time left on the clock to get a better look. Ultimately, it missed, and the Grizzlies would get this contested one, 108 to 106. Anthony Edwards would have 32 points in this one, but just 8 of 19 shooting from the field and 13 of 18 from the free throw line. And again, you got to hit the shot that matters the most. I believe there was a stat that said that he is quite literally one of the worst players of his caliber to be in as many clutch time situations and miss as many potential game-winning shots, with LeBron James trailing him in situations only, not efficiency in those situations. So that should say a whole lot about what's going on here. And it's unfortunate that Anthony Edwards finds himself in that position. He's a great player, but when the stakes are the highest, you know they're going to call on you. And you definitely have to deliver more often than not. You're not going to be perfect. You're not even going to hit 50% of the shots in that time. There's always going to be an element of uncertainty and unpredictability there. But you have got to at least give them some merit in their faith of you in this situation. It's as simple as that. Robert Dillingham, in his case, would have a solid performance off the bench. He would have 15 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists on 6 of 8 shooting, hitting 3 threes. Naz Reid, his counterpart, would have 29 points and 8 rebounds to lead the bench unit, with 11 of 20 shooting from the field and making 50% of his three-pointers as well. Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Julius Randle had horrible games, okay? They combined for 10 points on the night, while having 9 combined rebounds and 9 combined assists, sure. But, well, not 9 combined, 16 combined rebounds and 8 combined assists. But both of them made just 2 shots from the field and shot a combined 4 of 23 from the field in general. Also, 1 of 11 combined from beyond the arc. Now, again, yes, you want Anthony Edwards to hit that shot at the end of the day, but I mean, damn. Yes, they were competitive. They wouldn't have even had to be in a position to try to climb back and claw their way back into potential victory, if not for that bullshit they pulled. Meanwhile, you would have the Grizzlies get a decent amount of contributions from their bench again, getting 28 off there. And they needed it with Ja Morant having just 19 points in this ball game, struggling a little bit, but it did come together for him at the end. He would also have 7 assists on the night. Jaren Jackson Jr. would have 24 points and 11 boards on 9 of 18 shooting, despite not making a single three. Desmond Bane had 4 3-pointers to go along with his 22 points scored and 5 assists. And Jalen Wells would have 13 points and 2 rebounds on 4 of 9 shooting from the field. Moving on to the next game in this matchup. And honestly, as much as I would like to truly get into the full flow of this, there's honestly nothing to be said. Because this was just absolutely disappointing, this Celtics-Warriors game. Yes, a Warriors fan, certainly, definitely crushed to see what happened, but legitimately, from even the standpoint of a general NBA fan, I mean, what the fuck was this? What was this? This Warriors team is still on the decline after starting out 12-3. The Wizards' win didn't really prove much of anything. And I don't know. Because it seems like they are trying to fit, multiple, I guess, ordeals here. They're trying to account for trying to make the most of Stephen Curry's career, or the remainder of his career, while also trying to build for the future. And it seems like to this point, at least outside of the 2022 championship, over the past 5 years to this point, it hasn't really gone well. I mean, you had one of your worst, if not your worst season by win percentage in team history in that season where Curry got injured. And you follow that up with a below average season before getting the championship, and then another season that fell very short of expectations. You had to go in through the play-in to make the playoffs. And then another underwhelming season last year. It's just very, like, I don't know. Like, I don't necessarily know if a trade will be able to happen or not, but I would feel that something would have to take place here. Especially at this, with seeing something like this go down, where not only do you lose 125-85 against the Celtics team, but it was the way that they lost. I mean, nobody else outside of Stephen Curry really managed to do much of anything offensively. He accounted for most of the points the starters had combined in the game. He accounted for most of them by himself. Half of them, I should say. That's crazy. And he didn't necessarily have the best shooting night, but he felt as though he was the only one trying to initiate offense. And so naturally, he was going to chuck up a few shots. He would get 18 points. 6 of 16 shooting isn't the best, but, I mean, when it feels like nobody else is trying to contribute, well, sure. I mean, a player of that sort would do the same thing, whether or not it manages to go in, to be completely honest. And then offense is just one thing. The defense was sloppy overall. I mean, transition defense, terrible. From getting yourselves into some errant turnovers, especially after they had the 18-15 lead in the first quarter. They just got completely sloppy after that. Like, literally. Completely sloppy after that. You allow so many free buckets on the other end because you're not getting back on defense in time. You're getting in situations where you know that a defense with Stephen Curry will be hunted on numerous occasions, and they get themselves into spots on multiple switches where you have Stephen Curry in the post trying to hold up against Kristaps Porzingis. What do you think was going to happen? Easy bucket time after time, and he was able to draw multiple fouls on Stephen Curry from that alone. Because how is he really supposed to hold up against that? And the Warriors know better than that. You know that was going to be a struggle. So why are you putting him in a disadvantageous situation like that? That does not make any sense. Then the three-pointers. Oh, the three-pointers. They did exactly what the Celtics would want a defense to give them. They did exactly what they would want them to do. Literally, I've said it. I said it earlier in the video. You give them a chance to shoot open jumpers. They're going to get into a rhythm, and then they're going to start to eat off it and completely get a team packed up. That's exactly what happened. At multiple points, too. It's like, dude, to end off the first half and entering the third quarter just a little bit in there, they went on a 39-19 run with just straight up three-point shot after three-point shot after easy bucket in the paint because there was no resistance offered there as well. Nobody really tried to get physical with them there. And even in those moments, it seemed like they were just a bit stronger down there. Strong enough to muscle in some buckets even. And just make it look easier than it truly was. Then you get into the third quarter, and the Warriors do try to chip away just a little bit. But ultimately, with that one, they would also, by the end of the third quarter, go on another 43-22 overall run with the same shit going on. Three-pointer after three-pointer. And they are being gifted to them. Now, they're settled in, and they're going to continue to light the shit up. So even the ones that were contested to the best of the ability of each and every defending player on the Warriors squad, was still going to go in. Every single one. Because you allowed them to settle in like that. You gave it to them. Easily. All the bench players played in the fourth quarter, so it was relatively non-existent. And the Celtics still won that quarter. It was just disappointing overall. Like, literally. You know, all these MLK Day games were promoted. And you get a good one to start out. So you get roped in for a little bit. Thinking that this one was going to match. It absolutely did not. And again, not just as a Warriors fan, being a little salty for the loss, but also as a genuine NBA fan. Definitely just not optimal, man. Not optimal at all. Oh, okay. I didn't even note that Baylor Shireman got in the game. At least they played him. He put up 5 points. That's cool. But the fact that they could even afford to put in Baylor Shireman, a dude that they literally drafted out of Creighton as a guard, as a forward guard. 6'9" forward guard. A whole lot of weight at the very end of the draft. Could get playing time here. It's like, bro, like, come on. And certainly, you knew at this point that different questions are going to be asked by different people naturally. Because, like, why wouldn't they? They should want to figure out exactly what the hell is going on here. Or at the end of the first round. Okay. So warped, dude. I guess the Celtics fans are just going to enjoy that one a lot. And, I mean, granted, you know, even with that taking place, I mean, good things ended up happening later on in college football. So, I guess it helped a little bit. But still, that's just complete and total pain. The Bulls in another match would not necessarily experience that. They would actually get the better of the Clippers here. Despite Norm Powell putting up 27 points and being the best overall player on the team, even he didn't have the best shooting nights. Just 9 of 22 shooting overall and also 3 of 10 shooting from the three-point line. As the Bulls managed to not necessarily run them off the line, but do a good job of contesting shots and making these shooters uncomfortable. You would also have James Harden go through a similar thing. He would have 17 points and 10 assists, sure, but he also had the worst box plus minus on the team, if I'm not mistaken, while also shooting just 5 of 17 from the field and adding in just 3 of 13 three-pointers made on the night. Amir Coffey also didn't make a single three-pointer. Neither did Kevin Porter Jr., who shot just 1 of 10 from the field for 2 points off the bench. And Nicholas Batum missing both of his attempts. Definitely a night of reckoning for the Clippers. But for the Bulls, they'll definitely take it. I mean, compare to last game, Josh Giddey did well. 18 points and a near triple-double with 10 rebounds and 9 assists for him. Though, you know, question with him has been his shooting overall. Not in this game. 7 of 9 from the field is hyper efficient. Talen Horton-Tucker and Nikola Vucevic were not shooting the best from the field, even though it didn't matter. For them to both shoot just 33%, especially Vucevic as a center, shooting 33% from the field, is atrocious, man. Absolutely atrocious. But again, they did enough to give themselves the win. So you'll take that. Win 112-99. The Pistons would manage to take down the Rockets and go back above 500 in this one. And I mean, the story of this game for the Rockets, their star players were just highly inefficient. Role players couldn't really do enough to mask that at all. I mean, when you have Alperen Sengun and Jalen Green combining to make just 13 of 35 shots from the field and hitting just 2 of 9 of their three-pointers, that's going to trickle down everywhere else. So even when a player like Amen Thompson does try his best to contribute with 17 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and even 3 blocks, 3 steals, and ultimately doesn't end up mattering. The Pistons would get it by 11, as Cade Cunningham would have an all-star caliber performance with 32 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists. Forget the turnovers, though. He would shoot 12 of 22 from the field and make three-pointers out of 5 attempts. Shout out to Jalen Duren also, getting 16 points and 14 rebounds with the walking double-double that he is, making all 8 of his shots from the field. Malik Beasley would also have 17 points off the bench. Their next step is to just get rid of Tim Hardaway Jr. because what the fuck? They got to get rid of that man. The Pelicans would take down the Jazz in overtime. The fact that you need overtime to take down a team like this is absolutely beyond my understanding. But you can credit DeJounte Murray for making the game-tying layup that would help them get there. And ultimately, he would end off with a great night in their 4-point victory. You would have him get 26 points, 11 assists, and 9 rebounds on 8 of 24 shooting. Not necessarily the best, but doing enough to contribute to other players' success on the night. Especially when you look at what CJ McCollum was able to do. Dropping 45 points on 18 of 31 shooting and making 5 of 12 of his three-pointers while also grabbing 8 rebounds on the night. Trey Murphy Jr. would also add 24 points, with Jordan Hawkins also getting 18 points off the bench, and one of the better games that he's had as a New Orleans Pelican. As for the Jazz, they would get Walker Kessler back in this one, and he did make his presence felt, even making the shot that would force DeJounte Murray to have to tie up the game at the end of the regulation period. Ultimately, he would have 19 points on 8 of 10 shooting on the night, while also grabbing 13 rebounds. Zvi Mikhailiuk would also have 19 points on some 14 shooting. But when you look at this game overall, the Jazz should never have really had a chance. I mean, you have Keontae George, Isaiah Collier, Bryce Sensabaugh, and even Kyle Filipowski from Duke shooting terrifically bad from the field. Terrible. Like, Keontae George dead-ass shot 30% from the field and 18% from beyond the arc. All right. Isaiah Collier would shoot just 35% from the field. Bryce Sensabaugh would shoot just 29% from the field. And Kyle Filipowski around the same area. Like, what kind of shit is that? Granted, all of these players are young, I get it. And even Kyle Filipowski with that was able to put up a 10-point, 17-rebound double-double. Even Isaiah Collier was able to put up a 20-point, 11-assist double-double. 23 points and 7 assists for Keontae George isn't necessarily bad, but it's like, damn. If you shoot a little bit cleaner, you probably get this one if you're the Jazz. But we are talking about the worst team in terms of efficiency from the field in the league. So, I mean, I guess. And ultimately, along with the hot shooting night from CJ McCollum, they ended up losing the game despite having an advantage in total rebounding, offensive rebounding, points off of turnovers, and points in the paint. All of that goes in your favor, despite every last thing I just said. And you still lose? And this game right here pissed me the fuck off. This shit pissed me off, bro. I'm not gonna lie. This Mavericks-Hornets matchup, when I saw the ticker and saw what the hell happened, I absolutely lost my mind. Daniel Gafford is a great player. And I said numerous times, despite that if he were to lead a team in scoring, they were going to lose. Now, he didn't lead the team in scoring this one. He got the help that he would need from Kyrie Irving in this one, as he would put up 33 points and 4 rebounds on 11 of 24 shooting, making 3 threes. But Daniel Gafford, as a complimentary piece, still had a hell of a fucking game. 31 points for him to go along with 15 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and 7 blocks with no turnovers, with a single foul on 12 of 15 shooting, and making every last one of his free throws from the line. And you mean to tell me that despite that, Daniel Gafford became the first player in Mavericks history to have 30, 15, and 5 blocks in a game? And you lose by 5 to the Hornets. How is that possible? I need clarification. There is no way. I can't even put this game on Gafford or Irving. You have to look at everybody else here. Because P.J. Washington Jr., Najee Marshall, and Spencer Dinwiddie just wanted to brick every last fucking shot to fail in assisting Irving and Gafford throughout the game. They lost by 5. Granted, with the Hornets also making as many three-pointers as they did to keep things relatively close, when you have an advantage of around 25% in shooting, it doesn't help your cause, but still, you have it. All you have to do is provide some help, and you probably win. Like, they dominated in the paint, and they dominated on the boards. They got to the line with relative ease, and it still wasn't enough. That's just a damn shame. And every single player on that team outside of Irving and Gafford should be ashamed of themselves for wasting such a great game like that. That is borderline criminal, man. And it's no disrespect to the Hornets either. I mean, you gotta be a pretty solid team to end up winning a game like that. They're not necessarily the best, but they do show promise. You would get LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges having dueling 23-point ball games. Like, I understand. That's very good. Mark Williams would have another 13-point double-double with 13 boards. Nick Smith Jr. would also get 19 points on the night with 7 of 13 shooting. That's great. But, like, that's just such a waste. I guess what we can say, though, is that Josh Okogie in his first match, despite contributing just 5 points on 2 of 8 shooting from the field, it's not the best, but 5 points are what ended up making the difference here. They are that literally represents the margin of victory perfectly. So I mean, I guess Josh Okogie helped them win this one. I don't know, but still, it's just like, oh my gosh, that got me mad, bro. Because there's no way, like, the fact that you can have that happening and you just completely waste it. You waste history. That's crazy to me. The Knicks would get revenge on Trae Young and tell him to get out of the Square Garden, out of the Madison Square Garden, while giving him all the different explicit diction you could even think of, to be completely honest with you. Any dialogue you want to think about, they definitely said to him on his way out. He'll get the 119-110 victory against him and his squad, as Jalen Brunson would have 34 points on the night with 12 of 18 shots made, and also 3 of 5 shooting from beyond the arc. Mikal Bridges also had 26 points on 12 of 17 shooting from the field. Miles McBride would have 9 points off the bench, and Josh Hart would have 14 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists on the night on 7 of 12 shooting. Karl Anthony Towns definitely had a rough night going up against the likes of not only Clint Capella, but Onyeka Okongwu. He felt it. playing 37 minutes, getting just 13 points and 9 rebounds on 5 of 18 shooting. But despite all of that, he pivoted. He decided to get in his playmaking bag, and he had a solid 7 assists on the night with just a single turnover. Even though he himself struggled, he recognized that getting other players involved here would ultimately lead to victory, and surely enough, did just that. Even though Giannonobi would take it upon himself to just play the best defense he possibly could, despite contributing just 8 points on 2 of 4 shooting. As for the Hawks, Trae Young would have 27 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 steals on 8 of 22 shooting. Though he made half of his 3-pointers, Jalen Johnson would have 11 points and 12 boards along with 4 assists on 4 of 12 shooting. Not necessarily the best. DeAndre Hunter in a 6-man role would have 22 points and an assist to go along with shooting 7-14 from the field and making 4 of his 7 3-pointers. Also, they finally decided to start Onyeka Okongwu over Clint Capella. And ultimately, yet again, you see that both of them honestly contributed pretty equally in this one. But Onyeka Okongwu had a little bit of an edge offensively, and Clint Capella had a little bit of an edge defensively. Still, combined, they both did great work on Karl-Anthony Towns. But Onyeka Okongwu's in the future. He is the future. So you've got to give him that opportunity. You have to. You're obligated to do it. The Suns and the Cavs would face off, and this one would see the Cavs just dominate. Yeah. Donovan Mitchell would have a pretty good game. 33 points for him to go along with making 11 of 25 of his shots and also making 4 of his 9 3-pointers attempted. Darius Garland would have 16 points, 7 assists, and even 3 steals without much resistance. We get that on 6 of 13 shooting. And most everybody else, aside from Amani Bates and even JT Thor, who I didn't know was with the squad, managed to score on the night. Even Tristan Thompson, who somehow manages to still have an NBA contract, did actually work himself into registering a double-digit stat line in assists, rebounds with 10, while nabbing just a single point on the night. Quite the weird player. But we knew this already about him, so, this isn't incredibly surprising. That 1 point would come from the free throw line, shooting just 25% from there. But again, all of this is happening to a Suns team that just still does not know how to play defense. And their offense, when it goes cold, certainly is felt throughout the rest of the team. Like, yes, KD and Devin Booker would combine for 38 points on 15 of 30 shooting, but neither of them necessarily did a great job of spacing the floor, and most everyone else struggled to really find their own pathway to creating shots for themselves. Ultimately, it would result in a 26-point loss. Like, that's just insane. I mean, the Cavs were just more efficient overall from 3 with the volume from the free throw line. They nabbed 14 more offensive rebounds than them and had 8 more points off of turnovers. The ability to extend possessions and just will their way to dominate physically generally screwed the Suns over here. Moving on to the action from yesterday night. Start out with the Knicks versus the Nets. And honestly, with the way that these Nets have been playing inconsistently, I did not necessarily give this game much of a shot. Now, I did watch the first quarter and the second quarter of this ball game before getting out of here. And honestly, to the Nets' credit, they did go back and forth in this first quarter, despite the Knicks jumping out to an 8-point lead. They would eventually claw their way back into it, and all of a sudden, before you look up, Tyrese Martin tied up the ball game at 17 all, and then Noah Clowney managed to get the Nets a lead here that they would continue to fight for. And ultimately, with a couple of Day'Ron Sharpe free throws, they would actually have the 26-24 lead prior to the end of the first quarter. Now, in this game, you would see pretty much everyone else for the Knicks getting active. The highlight player was slated to be Jalen Brunson. I mean, they had noted that he had a chance to become the third Knick to reach 5,000 points in their first 2 seasons, alongside greats in Bernard King and Carmelo Anthony. And yet, when you look at it, you don't really see Jalen Brunson getting involved too much. He was struggling for the majority of this ball game, especially in this first half. He couldn't get anything to go. There was even a sequence where he missed back-to-back free throws, something that he rarely does when he's able to draw a foul. Missing both of those opportunities, definitely an off night for him. Still, by the end of the first half, the Knicks would possess a 59-51 lead. Now, I was under the assumption that the Nets were just about to completely crumble, so I turned the game off to tend to other duties, and I was rather surprised when I continued to track the game and noted that the likes of Cameron Johnson being back, who again, they have won all of their games on the season when he's playing. Naturally, with him being in, you are probably going to have a better chance. And surely enough, that would pay off. He would hit a couple of three-pointers, and the whole team would begin to rally around this contribution. I mean, even when it looked like the Knicks were going to pull away, getting the lead up to as large as 12 with a Josh Hart layup, the Nets would ultimately take it upon themselves to continue to at least show some fight comparative to most of the other players who are sitting on the bench at this current moment in time, right? It would be a 9-point ball game by the end of the third quarter, as Jalen Wilson would miss both of his free throw attempts. But the Knicks were definitely feeling the pressure. They were feeling the heat, and the Nets were certainly going to make sure that this would not stop at all. Like, for a stretch there, the Knicks went completely scoreless in the fourth quarter, and despite the Nets getting closer and closer, it was the turnovers that did them in by the end of this one. They just could not string together possessions for long enough to maintain a potential lead, even with them taking one off of a Keon Johnson three-pointer and then ultimately taking it back on a free throw. But they just started, at this point, we get into 2 minutes, and they just start playing sloppy basketball all of a sudden, not really giving themselves a huge chance like that. Now again, D'Angelo Russell would take it upon himself to make it a 2-point ball game once more, as he would hit a three-pointer at 52 seconds left to make things even more interesting than they already were. But by the end of it, Jalen Brunson would make the double free throws this time to give the Knicks the 99-95 win to open up the Rivals Week stretch that they have going on in the NBA. And it definitely felt like that kind of game. I was expecting way worse. And I had cut the game on at this time just after the three-pointer from D'Angelo Russell. So I guess I did myself a disservice by not having faith in the Nets, although I guess to an extent it has been warranted over the course of the season. I would argue, but I mean, anything can happen in any given basketball game, so, you gotta be mindful of that. The Knicks would have a pretty bad game from 3 by their standards, but they were still able to muscle buckets in at the right times and also get to the free throw line effectively in the clutch moments to ensure their victory. Karl-Anthony Towns had 25 points and 16 boards along with 6 assists on 11 of 18 shooting. OG Anunoby would also have 20 points on 8 of 18 shooting. And Jalen Brunson, again, despite struggling, would finish with 17 points on 7 of 18 shooting and also 4 assists. Josh Hart, on the other hand, had 7 points, 12 rebounds, and 9 assists, because that's the kind of player he is, while shooting 3 of 5 from the field. And the Nets, all of these other contributions from these players are decent enough, despite Cameron Johnson and D'Angelo Russell having off shooting nights. I mean, a combined 12 of 37 from the field and a combined 6 of 20 from 3. Though, again, they hit timely shots. I'll give them their credit there. But my focus is on Nicholas Claxton. Bro, this man, I think it's a matter of him genuinely not wanting to be there. But this brother right here, like, if you're not going to be there, you just got to go. I'm not going to lie to you. If you really don't want to be there that bad, just leave. I'm not going to lie. At multiple points, I kid you not, this man was playing without any effort out there. He was just crying about different calls and shit like that, just lacking any effort whatsoever after missing point-blank range shots on his end. And then he, instead of truly trying to lock down Karl-Anthony Towns on defense, he allows him to body him up in the post and doesn't even deny him the ball whatsoever, then complains about a potential foul call when it's based off of something stupid that he did on his end, not even necessarily offering the resistance you would expect him to dish out. And that eventually hurt them in this game. Meanwhile, you have Day'Ron Sharpe stepping in and being more inspired, more invigorated than he was, which makes absolutely no sense. Especially with, Nicholas Claxton, I believe, on the verge of a potential, free agency nod. This is not a great showing to try to get teams to buy into you as a player and give you a contract that you'd be looking for. But it's just nonsense. And I mean, it'd be even worse. If you, at least with this game, it looked as though by the end of it, he cleaned up his act and got a little better on that front to help them, especially on the defensive side. But if it was bad early on for him, and this game was competitive through and through, how is the next game going to go? Well, we get on to this 76ers and Nuggets match, and they detail off the rip that this is the 26th different starting lineup combination that Philadelphia has had this season, which is the most in the league. And it's crazy. Yes, they can't get in a rhythm, but honestly, if you're going to be changing around the lineup that much and having to change around different personnel that often, can you really expect them to truly get in a rhythm at any point until they get a good amount of their core back? Can't really. I mean, it would start out pretty well for the 76ers, to be completely honest. You would get a few solid possessions for them that led to an efficient shot from Eric Gordon, for example, getting him an easy look. And he would get off to getting 6 points in this first quarter. You would have them string together some really good looks. But defensively, it would begin to crumble after a while for them. They just started to take off at the halfway mark of this first quarter, man. Like, before you knew it, the Nuggets would have an 8-point lead to end it off, as Reggie Jackson would hit a layup to get it down to that score and that margin. That lack of defense would continue, as Nikola Jokic was just able to carve them up in any way he wanted. And other players on the team were getting in on it as well. You had them getting lackadaisical in transition and allowing Russell Westbrook to hit an open three-pointer. And that was merely just the one aspect of this thing. They were able to get lob pass after lob pass because they offered no resistance in the paint and no awareness of what the hell was going on down there. They allowed players like Julian Strawther and even Peyton Watson to get going from deep as well, and also making open looks, solid decisions on the offensive front to keep the ball moving. And also, especially Peyton Watson, as is the norm with him, playing great defense on his end, despite some quality shots going in for the 76ers in this quarter. Ultimately, though, things came to a head when you had... Well, let's just put it like this. Shit got started, all right, when Paul George, man, gets pushed around by Julian Strawther and gets a clean shot made on him. All of the shit going on in Philadelphia right now, as I alluded to earlier, I put it on him and I put it on Joel Embiid. I mean, quite literally. And it goes way deeper than just them not necessarily being healthy. No, both of them just seem to not really give a fuck and aren't truly willing to put in the effort they need on both sides of the fucking ball. On both sides. Sure, Paul George is going to get a bucket every now and then, and even then, that hasn't really been as bankable as one would want this season. I get that he's an older player and that naturally your athleticism is going to dwindle a little bit, so you're not necessarily going to want to spend a lot of that on defense. But you still got to try. You still got to offer some resistance, and even then, you have a bigger frame than a guy like Julian Strawther. Naturally, you're supposed to be able to push him around. It shouldn't be in reverse. And if that was just the one time that happened in this game, fine. But this was a culmination of everything. A lack of complete and total effort from him on both sides of the ball. And then also him just getting out-physicaled by multiple players on the team. And wait till I get to this. I mean, literally, though, you would get down in a little later on in the second quarter where he would get Jokic in and one on both George and Yabusele. Then trying their absolute hardest at that particular point in time, trying to stop him, and they just could not. He got a sneaky shot to go in and drew the foul. That is just Jokic in a nutshell. Now, the 76ers would get a little momentum. Paul George would hit a shot, and then Tyrese Maxey would hit a sort of buzzer beater layup to bring the game within 10. But after the 76ers got the scoring started with another tough shot from Tyrese Maxey, all things considered, the Nuggets would then go on a 38-25 run to move into the fourth quarter and out of the third, extending the lead even more, and eventually forcing the 76ers to put in their bench unit, but not before an absurd thing happened in this ballgame. You would have Braun get the ball in the post, in one of the earlier possessions in the third quarter. And I kid you not, this man, Paul George, gets pushed down to the ground after getting backed up. And then Braun is able to spin around and get a near dunk, but we'll call it a layup, on him. Pushed down to the ground by Christian Braun. You're supposed to be Paul George. You're supposed to be one of the best two-way players in the league. And you mean to tell me that you get done like that defensively by a player who was still being questioned by pretty much everybody coming into this season, who had to truly assert himself as a solid enough player just to get more reps from this very team. And he's coming in and he is backing you down like that to where you then fall over and he is able to pull out an elite post move on you. One of the better defenders the NBA has to offer, right? That was the most embarrassing thing I've fucking seen. I don't know if he flopped. And honestly, I don't give a fuck. That is still embarrassing and cheap. That you mean to tell me you can't even hang with Christian Braun, or you feel as though defensively you can't hang with him, so you then have to resort to some cheap tactic to draw a superstar call. Because you believe that at this point, with your production this season, you are still a top 30 player in the league. And that's bullshit. Now, to add even more insult to injury, he would have a turnover and got ripped by Nikola Jokic, who had a good amount of steals in the night. And eventually, you would have Paul George playing some semblance of defense, yet it still wouldn't matter. Couldn't recover in time to stop Nikola Jokic for long enough. Literally, you would have Nikola Jokic get him again in another situation where he stole the ball. But don't worry, eventually it would all come together when Russell Westbrook decided to get active and decided to steal him a pass, this time from Kelly Oubre Jr., leading to an easy layup. And it would just continue. You would have Nikola Jokic hitting shots from all over. He was hitting shots from the fucking corner. He was hitting shots from the wing. He was getting any fucking shot that he wanted. And I get that he's an unstoppable player, but these were wide open shots. You're late on your rotations. You're playing lazy defense. You don't think that a team like the Nuggets, especially when they're able to get going, you don't think that they're going to catch you. So that's exactly what you got. The fourth quarter would see both teams put in their second unit after a little while. I mean, even with Jamal Murray playing just a little bit, as he would have a rough game in this one. And it still didn't matter. But that's besides the point. The teams would get in their second units, though. And you would still have, at this particular point in time, to make things even worse, the Nuggets, the second team for the Nuggets, would go on an 11-3 run from this point to make the score 144-109 in favor of the Nuggets. It's just an embarrassment all around, as Nikola Jokic would have yet another triple-double, his fourth straight, which, if he continues this pace, he could potentially tie and then break his own personal streak of consecutive triple-doubles, which stands at 5 right now. In this game, he had 27 points, 10 assists, and 13 rebounds on 10 of 15 shooting, while making 2 threes. Julian Strawther off the bench has also been a very good player for them, especially when they needed that kind of production off the bench. To have it always helps. He would have 23 points on 8 of 14 shooting, along with 5 threes in this one. Aaron Gordon also would have a 19-point performance in his return, while adding 3 assists and making 6 of 7 of his shots, including all 3 of his threes, and even being unaccounted for in the dunker spot by the same 76ers defense, which led to easy lobs and dunks by him. Craziness, man. Christian Braun would have 20 points as a starting caliber player on 8 of 11 shooting, despite not attempting a 3. Michael Porter Jr. would have a pretty calm game compared to what he would usually try to do, taking just 13 shots, hitting 8 of them, and getting 19 points and 6 rebounds on the night as well. Russell Westbrook had 11 points, 9 assists, and 7 rebounds on 4 of 5 shooting. Jamal Murray would finish with just 9 points, but also had 6 rebounds and 7 assists. They are finally starting to figure out different ways to get the best out of everyone, really. Bench seems to be fortified a little more. You're getting your starters to do that consistently. They could finally be on the right path after having such a rough start. And I mean, it makes sense too. I wonder, like, naturally they're probably going to look to start Aaron Gordon, but I don't know. Do they consider bringing him off the bench? Man, that could be something. Tyrese Maxey, on the other hand, for the 76ers, had 28 points and 10 assists on the night on 11 of 21 shooting, only hitting just 3 of his 10 3-pointers. Paul George, again, 11 points. Just 11 points. 9 assists. And 3 turnovers for him on 5 of 11 shooting. That's not very superstar-like. Superstar-esque. 76ers just need to get it together. I mean, literally, you had the same amount of points as Justin Edwards in this ballgame. And Gaston Yabusele had 22 points off the bench, man, compared to you. As he played just 4 less minutes also. Like, that's anyways, moving on to the other action from last night, you would have the Wizards completely crumble to the Lakers. That's expected. LeBron would have 21 points, 10 rebounds, and 13 assists for a triple-double on 8 of 18 shooting. Dorian Finney-Smith would have one of his better games, I think the best game he's had as a Laker from what I've seen, with 16 points on 6 of 8 shooting and also 4 threes made. Off the bench, you would have Anthony Davis score 29 points on 14 of 22 shooting. And you would have Austin Reeves as well get 16 points and 8 assists to go. Just 4 of 15 shooting, very poor outing in that regard. But again, you can get away with anything you want against this team. A team that quite literally saw multiple players appear in garbage time, granted, and scored absolutely nothing. Jordan Poole, dead ass, shot 5 of 18 from the field and also got just 4 threes in a 12 attempts to get 15 points. Kyle Kuzma, 13 shots to get 12 points and missed 3 free throws. On top of that, Alex Saul missing all of his 3-pointers and shooting 5 of 14 from the field for just 10 points. Like, it's just an all-around joke and pile of dog shit down there. They got what they deserved here. I mean, I can't say much else. What you see is what you get with this team. So you can't be fooled. No matter what. You can't try to let them deceive you into thinking that they're going to make something happen. Because they're just going to do the same old thing that the Washington Wizards have always done. You know? That's how this thing is. Alright? Meanwhile, for the Magic and this Raptors game as well, The Raptors would get this with a win of 109-93. They would have a 40-point quarter in the third that the Magic simply could not overcome. And they got great contributions from most of their starters here. Not to mention some of their guys off the bench. I mean, Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk would have double digits in yet another game as they contributed 15 and 12 respectively. While Grady Dick and Scotty Barnes had 17 points on good shooting and making multiple three-pointers as well, along with R.J. Barrett hitting 2 of his 3 threes, getting 19 points on 6 of 9 shooting as well. Just effective shooting, and ultimately they would get the win against a team that's still struggling to find their footing in terms of efficiency. I mean, literally, you have a team shooting 53% from the field and 54% from beyond the arc, and then you compare that to a team shooting just 41% from the field and 29% from beyond the arc. It's crazy. Crazy, man. Like, wild. Paolo Banchero would have 26 points on 10 of 19 shooting to go along with 12 boards. Wendell Carter Jr. would also have a 10 rebound double-double on 4 of 11 shooting, which is definitely poor. Tristan Da Silva will have 9 points on 3 of 10 shooting, definitely poor. Contavious Caldwell-Pope did manage to make a couple of his three-pointers and got 20 points on 8 of 12 overall shooting. But it still was not enough at all. And then finally, you would have the Trailblazers manage to get yet another win, this time against the Heat. Despite a very good game from Kel'el Ware getting 20 points and 15 boards along with 2 blocks, and Duncan Robinson leading the way with 22 points on 8 of 15 shooting and 6 made threes. It ultimately wasn't enough. They needed a little more from Jimmy Butler, and they needed way more from Terry Rozier, who had just 9 points on the night on 4 of 13 shooting. It also didn't help that Nikola Jokic added just 12 points on just 5 of 14 shooting. And that Alec Burks also, who usually will get you a few buckets here and there off, the dribble, did not make a single shot from the field in 13 minutes of play. They got behind the 8 ball. As the Trailblazers will also take full advantage of just that. Danny Avdija would have yet another double-double with 16 points and 10 rebounds. Also 5 assists on 5 of 11 shooting. Jeremy Grant would make a return and would have 18 points in this on 5 of 14 shooting. DeAndre Ayton would have a solid game, I guess. 22 points, 15 rebounds for him, and 2 assists on 11 of 14 shooting. Anthony Simons would have 24 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists on 9 of 20 shooting with 6 made threes in this one. And ultimately, when you look at the entire breakdown, the fact that they were able to get out in transition with such proficiency, I mean, quite literally, a 16-point advantage in transition for the Trailblazers. So that's right there ultimately gave them the victory here. And that'll do it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.